And now it's Deborah Cobelt Live and the Little Italy Podcast.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm Deborah Cobelt Live and our Little Italy Podcast. And please welcome our guest, Christopher Gialanella. I have to put my glasses on for that because I had to make sure that I pronounced your name right. You know, I've known you for a while. I got to get it right? These long Italian names that we have. Christopher Gialanella is the publisher and also the president of Los Angeles Magazine. Oh, don't leave me yet now. There you go. There's the latest magazine with Paris Hilton on the cover. Also Orange Coast Magazine and Pasadena Magazine. There you go. Oh, I love it. Christopher, you come prepared. I love this.
Always.
You gotta love a guest who comes prepared. Also, we are both from New Jersey, so you're probably going to hear a little bit of a Jersey accent coming through. And we're both Italian, so this is being simulcast on our Little Italy podcast as well. And we all made our way here to Los Angeles, so there's a lot to talk about. Thank you for joining me, Christopher.
Thanks, Deborah. Excited to be here, and this is amazing.
Yeah, no, it's great. And we met down at the Italian American Museum in Los Angeles. There was a wonderful exhibit there, I think, on creative minds. That was terrific, and it's still happening down there. So please go take a look. But Christopher, I always like to dial it back, right? Because you weren't always this magazine magnet, right? You're a guy from Jersey. So let's dial it back a little bit about, did you always want to do this, be a publisher, as you were roaming through the Livingston Mall in New Jersey?
I had no idea. I don't even know what I want to do now, Deborah. But anyway, back in the 70s and 80s, growing up in New Jersey, I always had a job. My first job was at a place called Silverman's. I put together the newspapers, put them out front for people to take and buy on Sunday. It was a weekend job. It was a lot of fun. I think I was like 13 when I did that. Then my big break came at Baskin-Robbins in the Livingston Mall. And I think, Deborah, we may have run into each other somewhere. I think either at Hot Sam's, Spencer's, Nathan's, but you name it. Or maybe I gave you a scoop of butter pecan ice cream. Who knows? And, worked there throughout high school, graduated. And, but New Jersey was such a fun place to grow up. It really was. We were played in the streets and went to public schools and had all our friends. And, it was just a very, really great place to grow up, I think.
Right. And let's talk about Spencer's Gifts just for a second. Wasn't that the coolest place? Like all of my friends would meet at Spencer's Gift. They had like those really cool psychedelic things that you'd bring home and it would be, different colors on the wall.
Writing, you touched it and then it did. Yeah, it was really cool. And it had a really interesting smell. I could probably still smell Spencer Gifts if I walked into a store blindfolded. I'd say I'm at Spencer's.
Yeah, I miss that place. I miss a lot of stores that are no longer around, right? I don't even know if the Livingston Mall is still there.
It's funny, back then there were no food courts. They just randomly put a restaurant anywhere, right? We had one called Maggie's Pub that my friend Evan Slater's parents owned. That was like in a random spot next to a hair salon. Then there was Lori's, which was another great place at the mall that was in the middle of, a shoe store. So it was kind of interesting. The malls back then we didn't have a food court. So now I think they do.
Yeah, I didn't even think about it that way. But, so from Jersey, right, you made your way over to New York. I think that was one of your first jobs, right? Weren't you doing PR? Tell us about it. Because this all kind of led to where you are now. Sorry.
I'll be quick. I'll give the elevator pitch. So after high school, I went to college in Wisconsin, studied political science, loved it in Madison, great place, totally different from New Jersey. And then I wound up getting a job as an intern in Washington, D.C. for Congressman Dean Gallo, who was our local congressman in New Jersey. And the weird thing is my grandmother, who lived in Parsippany, New Jersey, was at a Memorial Day parade, and she ran out in the middle of the street when she saw Dean Gallo and said, "Dean, hire my grandson for an internship." And little do you know, she got me the job. So I worked in D.C. for a summer. And, it was great, working on the Hill and doing fun stuff. And then my parents decided, we can't pay your rent anymore. You've got to get a real job, right? So the internships at that time didn't pay. So I wound up moving back to New Jersey, getting a job in New York City for a company called PIMS. And then within a year, they gave me a choice. You could move to Chicago or you can move to Los Angeles. And I said, I'm moving to Los Angeles.
right?
Oh, if you have the choice between hot and cold, and I spent many winters in the Midwest from being in college in Wisconsin, it was time to do something interesting. And I moved to LA in 1994, but when I came to visit, it was the same week as the OJ chase of June of 94, which was kind of an interesting time to be here. And I think you were out here around the same time, Deborah, right?
Absolutely 100%. We moved here. I got a job at KCAL 9 and then Fox 11, had a baby, like all simultaneous. And John and I, because, my husband is a talk show host in LA, is actually one of the longest running talk show hosts in the country, still there. And we were newbies, right? We just got married, literally just got married, got the call to come to LA. We're like, here we come. And OJ, there were fires in Laguna, like all kinds of crazy things. And we're like, man, this place is nuts. Like we thought New York City was crazy, but holy, that OJ trial was something. But go ahead.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So I wound up staying, and I wound up staying with, I don't know if you guys remember Ian Ziering, another New
Yeah.
Jersey guy. He was engaged to a gal I went to high school with. I wound up staying at Ian's house, which was also unbelievable to stay in the Hollywood Hills
Oh,
with
yeah.
a great actor at the time, great actor now too, not at the time. But 90210 was like the biggest show out. So I would go out to nightclubs and restaurants with him, and it was like, I'm getting all this attention. I love LA. This is a great
It was
place.
fun.
And then I wound up moving here in September, went back, packed up, and moved here in September. And, I loved what I did at the time. It was fun. It was a really good intro. I worked for a company called PIMS, and I worked for a really interesting woman named Margaret Foreman, whose family owned Pacific Theaters. And I learned a lot from her. She was a tough boss, but she always taught me first impressions are everything and always be on time. So those were two quality things I learned from my first boss.
I knew her. Her kid went to school with my kid. I can't believe that.
Yes. Yeah.
I can't believe that. I don't want to mention a kid's name, although he's in his 20s now. His name is Rafe.
Yeah.
Nice young man, and very nice family too. Oh my goodness, what a
Yeah,
small
what a
world.
small
I didn't know
world.
this about you. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
And I
Yeah, they
learned a
were.
lot from her. I mean, she was tough. She was like the kind of boss where if you showed up, 2 minutes late after 9, she would, shut the door and sorry, sick day. So you learn to be on time when you had a boss like that. But years later, right before
Wow.
the pandemic, my family were out in the UK and we wound up having dinner with her and her husband. And, just a great woman who really was the reason why I really came to Los Angeles, if you really think about it.
Yeah,
People that you
but
meet along the way.
yeah, I'm going to go back, go down memory lane with you a little bit if you don't mind, because I remember
Sure.
coming to LA then, and it was like so much fun. I was never ever, because now I'm a little apprehensive. I have to tell you, when I'm parking somewhere in Hollywood, like, oh gosh, is my car going to be safe? And am I going to be safe? I'm sort of navigating down, alleyways and everything. So back then, none of that happened, right? You just like plop your car somewhere on Melrose or on Hollywood Boulevard or whatever. It was a different time, wasn't it? Or sometimes I'm thinking, was I jaded? Is it that different? But it is different, isn't it?
It was definitely different. It was kind of, I lived in the South Bay when I moved here. I was
Yeah.
in Hermosa Beach, Manhattan Beach. And back then it was almost like an extension to college. Like nobody opened
Yeah.
their door. You were invited to every party. You met people who were just graduating from college and, we're all starting in our 20s. So it was really a great time to be here. And I think LA in your 20s is really spectacular. But then, but I remember you're totally right. There were so many fun places back then, like Cafe Luna on Melrose. I remember
Oh,
going there. Cafe Maurice on La Cienega. All those fun. Shia Brasserie was the first restaurant I went to in LA when I first moved here, and I always loved Chaya Venice, and it was always such a great spot. But
man. You and I were hanging in the
we're
same
going
places.
back.
We are,
Yeah.
but it just seemed like an easier time, I guess. I hope that somehow LA can sort of manage to get back there. And by that I just mean in terms of us feeling safe here again, right? I mean, I have an
Yeah.
issue with that. That's my
Right.
personal thing, living here in LA. But anyway, so then what? So you're working for this company. You were working for Margaret, which is crazy. And how did you end up being like the publisher of all publishers? Like,
So what happened was, obviously, it was a fun job working for Margaret at this company called PIMS, but I had met my wife at the time, who was my girlfriend, and she thought, you got such a great personality. You're so good with people. Maybe you could do something really interesting. Maybe get into sales. And I always felt like if you didn't have your own business or you didn't have a family business, sales was really the best thing to do to make your own destiny, create your own destiny. So my wife had brought home a copy of Angelino magazine at the time,
Yeah.
which had just launched. And she said, you should call this gentleman whose face is in the magazine. His name was Michael Kong. He was the founder and original publisher. They started in Chicago. They launched in LA. And I randomly called them. That's the time when you actually pick up the phone and call somebody. And I remember the conversation. I said, hi, Michael, I love your magazine. I'm a young guy. I'm looking to, get married soon. And my girlfriend thinks I'd be great at sales. And I understand salespeople get paid commission. So you kind of have nothing to lose, right? So if I don't bring in any sales, I don't get paid. So he said, all right, well, come on in. So I went in and we were right in that white building on Wilshire and Hauser that used to be the E Entertainment building. That's where the original offices were. And I went in, introduced myself, and Michael's like, great, you're going to sit right here. And I literally shared an office with him, which at first I was nervous, but then in hindsight, it was probably one of the best things ever because I literally learned every single thing about the magazine world, publishing, sales, and everything else. So it was really a great experience for me. And, Michael and I are still close to this day. And, that's where I got my start, in sales and kind of grew to ad director, then associate publisher, then publisher, then group publisher, so spent many years at Modern Luxury, 23 years to be exact. And then, changes happen. And now I'm here at LA Magazine in Orange Coast and Pasadena. So, very interesting cycle.
If anybody goes on your Instagram page, you are everywhere. Absolutely everywhere. I think you clone yourself, but we'll talk about that later. And I've done my research on you. I've made some phone calls. Everybody likes you, Christopher.
Oh, they
everybody.
Do?
Yes, everybody
likes you.
I
didn't know that. I like to be liked.
No, they're like, oh yeah, he gets everything done. Oh yeah, he's so personable. Oh, you're one of those guys. So of course you would be good at sales because you're a likable guy. And the first rule of sales is you got to be likable, not a bullshitter, right? A lot of these guys walk into but you sort of, I can see where you exude that you like what you do. Like when I met you at the museum, we just struck up a great conversation, and then other people joined in. So of course you're going to be a success doing this. So here you are now at let's talk Los Angeles Magazine. You were lifting up the cover with Paris Hilton. Magazines have changed too. It hasn't just changed that we don't go to Spencer's Gifts anymore, right? Magazines have changed a lot. So talk to me about sales. Talk to me about holding the magazine versus going online and looking at it. Like how is it changing? How are you changing with it?
Well, just to go back to what you had said about being a salesperson, I always felt like, and then I'll answer that other question. It's so important to walk into a room and not have people avoid you, right? So I always feel like whenever you're meeting somebody and you're presenting an opportunity or you're on a sales call, it's almost like a first date. You ask so many questions to see, if it makes sense to continue doing business. And it's okay if it doesn't. And I always kind of took the approach was, this is what we're doing. Give me 5-10 minutes. If you don't want to hear it anymore, you don't have to, but don't you want to know what's going on? And most people really appreciated that approach because, you're not like being so salesy, but you're really being more informative. So I think that's really important. And especially to segue into where we're going with print magazines, it's more important now whenever I'm on a sales call with myself or my team or whatever to present opportunities that not are only print, but digital and experiential and social media and video. So our business model has really changed where we have the core magazine. And, I'm so proud of LA Magazine. And when I came over about 2.5 years ago, the magazine had been purchased by two attorneys, Mark Garagos and Ben Meiselas, and they formed a new media company called Engine Vision Media. And they'd reached out to me because they had heard all about me, Deborah. Hey, you're the guy that needs to oversee our media company. So I came on board, and it's been amazing. And I always coveted LA Magazine as sort of like the Bible to Los Angeles. I mean, it started in the 60s. Jeff Miller was the original publisher, and it was always based on retail, shopping, the best places to hike, luxury, travel, you name it. We're still doing the same thing today, really being a celebratory magazine and really celebrating the city we live in. So that's kind of the background of the magazine itself.
I know so much is online. I know so much is on Instagram and TikTok and everything else. We've got to keep our print magazines. I was just at one of the local TV stations in their green room at the newsroom because I was appearing on something. And there was, of course, LA Magazine and a couple of magazines in the green room. And I picked it up and I noticed something in particular, right? I picked it up and somebody else was in the green room waiting to go on. And they said, "Oh, what are you reading?" And it really struck up a conversation as opposed to me just scrolling through my phone. We've got it, you know what I mean? And then I wouldn't have talked to this guy at all. And then somebody else walked in and they're like, "Oh, what are you guys talking about?" It really, conjures up a conversation. We've got to keep some of the old stuff a little bit, right? We got to keep the print magazines alive. I like them on my coffee table personally, but will we? That's my question.
Yeah, I mean, I really, I honestly think almost like, records came back, whoever would have thought albums and CDs might be coming back, so old is new, and I honestly think with the pandemic coming, our magazines had a lot more value too, because most people were home 5 years ago and they wanted content that wasn't all about what you're watching on the news and how bad things are getting. So we were almost an escape. And I think that's people really appreciated reading a print magazine at that time. And our subscriptions have gone up too since then. So people really want to explore and read and understand what's happening in the city. Yesterday, I was with a gal who we had tea at the Peninsula for a meeting, and she's from Chicago, and I brought her a copy of the magazine, and she was so grateful because she's in town and she wants to know where to go and what to do, so you're right, it's a conversation piece as well.
Yeah, that was my next question. As president and publisher, how do you decide the content, right? Because, are you appealing to people who are 20? Are you appealing to somebody like me who's, let's just say, over 40? Like,
Yeah,
what, you know what I mean? Like, how do you do that? Because 40 is cool too now. 60 is cool too. You can be 80. Look at, what is Iris Appel, God rest her soul. She was cool. I think she was 100. Yeah. I mean, it's okay now to go to a place and see an older influencer. They don't even have to be an influencer, but you know what I mean? Hanging with somebody who's young. Like, how do you decide this stuff?
So we have, obviously, I'm on more of the business side, but we have our editorial team, and we put together an editorial calendar every year of what makes sense for that month. So we know January in LA is best new restaurants.
Yes.
February is interesting because we kind of pivoted with the fires in LA, and we did really awesome fire covers. And actually, you can see one behind me. Garen Swing did this great cover. He lived in the Palisades. His home was partially burned, and he had a gallery. The Bruce, I can't remember which gallery it was. Bruce's gallery in the Palisades, but all his artwork was burnt down. But he created a cover. I had Mr. Brainwash create another cover, who's a famous LA artist. And then we had Robert Vargas, who actually has the Guinness Book of World Records for the biggest mural in town anywhere. He did another cover. So we kind of pivoted our editorial for February, which made sense. And people really appreciated these covers because they think they kind of were informative, but they also created some sort of beauty into what we were going through. And then March is our LA International Women's Month. So obviously LA Woman is a huge opportunity. And you're an LA woman, Deborah. So this year we wanted to honor women who were doing good during the fires. So we had fire chiefs, we had actresses, we had all sorts of different philanthropists. So Paris Hilton, her Malibu home had burnt down. And then 18 hours later, she raised $1 million for people in Altadena. So kind of taking somebody like Paris and looking at her in a different light. We're going to be honoring her at a luncheon later on in the month, or maybe early April, where she's our LA Woman of the Year. And then in Orange County, we followed suit as well with our Kick-Ass Women, which are obviously women in Orange County that are doing really great things for the world and for the community being honored. And then Pasadena as well. We have 4 firefighters who are female that are on the cover of Pasadena. So we're going to be honoring them at a luncheon as well. So kind of when you bring print and events together, that's kind of how that whole thing makes sense. And then obviously we go through, like, Best of LA is a big issue in August. We do a lot of food is really what people come to LA Mag for as well. We do a big Best New Restaurants event in January. We do another food event in October. We do a big Leading Men of Hollywood in November. So really depending on what's happening, we kind of create a really cool editorial theme to go along with it. And then in that theme, we have print, we have digital, and then we try to do some sort of experiential, some sort of an event component as well.
And it all works really nicely together. By the way, before I forget, I'd love to attend any of those luncheons. Of course, I'll purchase a ticket. It's for a good cause. But let me know, because I'd really like to come.
No,
really
definitely. We'd love to have you for sure. Yeah. And the events are great because, it's also important because in the magazine world, we're really connectors in the community.
Yeah.
And that's what we do best, right? So we'll bring people together like Deborah. You'll come to the Paris Hilton LA Woman of the Year luncheon. You'll meet all these different ladies and men, new ways for you to grow your both business profession and your friendships, So we try to find like-minded people that could come together to network together. So that's another reason why it's important to go to events, especially events like that we do.
And I know that you really believe that in your heart. That's interesting because LA people are good people. A lot of my friends and family back in New Jersey who've never been out here are like, oh, they're LA people. And I'm like, they're people just like anywhere else in a small suburb in Jersey. Like, they happen to have a profession that might be different than yours, but
Right.
They're hustling, they're working hard every day. Maybe some of the relationships are transactional, but many of them are not, right? What do you say to people back east who ask you about what it's like here? Go ahead.
It's really interesting because I feel like, and not to keep going back to the fires, but I remember when they first struck in early January, I'd gotten so many phone calls and emails from friends back east saying, "Are you okay?" And nobody really understood the landscape of LA where the fires were, they were close, but they weren't right exactly out my front door. So I think there was sort of the stigma that LA, everything is kind of in one place, but we're such a spread out community of all these wonderful different communities from like Long Beach to Malibu to Calabasas to Pasadena. Like we're so spread out. So it's kind of fun where it's kind of like a big suburb in a way where you have your downtown city vibe, but then you have all these other areas around that are, like different communities. So most people also think, I live in LA, I must be a movie star, right? Like nobody understands that, I get up in the morning and I look at what I need to do for the day. And, the business that I have to do is really based on, advertising sales and sponsorships for events and ways that we could create revenue so that we could keep going, So what you see on Instagram, it's fun, but, that's like a gist of what we really do. We're here to create relationships, let our customers' businesses grow. So I think back east, a lot of people just think, we're out here going to parties and doing this and that, but we're business professionals. Like we're working hard like everybody else.
Where do you get some of your ideas, your business ideas? The advertising, the promotion. How do you do it?
I always feel like, and when I came to LA Mag, yes, I am the president and publisher, but you kind of have to lead by example. So I always feel like you got to show the team what you can do, but you also have to get your ideas from the team. So I'm like very open. Everyone comes with great ideas during our meetings, and we kind of strategize together. Like, will this work? Will that not work? And it's okay if things don't work, right? We tried it at least. And I know, like, we created our Best of Beauty Awards, which is happening in September. That was a new initiative that we brought to the table here. Very successful beauty products. We bring a celebrity to be sort of a host. We do some editorial. We give out awards. We get sponsors. You could be there, Deborah, as our spokesperson for beauty because you are beautiful. But there's ways that we always create ideas and we all work as a team. So everyone has, an open mic to come up with ideas. And we all kind of go with them and say, this could work, this might not work, but hey, let's try it if it's something that we think could work,
I noticed something about you. And look, I interview a lot of people the way you do, right? There you were on the red carpet, having a grand old time at the Oscars and everywhere else this season. You were everywhere. But why do people talk to you, Chris? I'm going to answer that. Because you're very likable. And I think that has a lot, really, it has a lot to do with success. Like, enjoy what you do. Give somebody else the stage for a minute, step aside and let them talk about themselves. And I have noticed, because I told you I did some research, you're great at that. And I think, again,
Yeah.
as an inspiration to others who want to sort of climb the ladder or open their own business, I think that has so much to do with being successful. A good attitude, like really, like if something doesn't work, all right, let me listen to my team. Let me try something else instead of wallowing. Don't you think? If you were to
I agree. And it's funny you brought that up because, I started doing those red carpet interviews recently because I also felt like, obviously in our business, like we have different reporters and things but I feel like LA Mag, it's important for us to be out there because we are entertainment as well. So that's one of the reasons why I started doing it. But also when I was interviewing people, I also wanted to interview everyday people that were at the event. So someone who was maybe a stylist for a celebrity, who maybe would walk down and nobody would know who they were, so they wouldn't give them an interview. So I also like to learn somebody who looks cool and fun. I want to know who that person is. Like that lady had on a really cool dress and her hair looks spectacular. Let's see what her story is. And I always want to get everybody's LA story. And it's so funny because Deborah, I think we talked about this at one point where what is your LA story? What brought us all here? And I remember being a little kid and watching shows like Charlie's Angels and The Love Boat and Fantasy Island. I'm like, God, all those TV shows took place in LA. Like, I want to live in LA one day, right? So it's kind of funny that we're here now. And I remember having lunch one afternoon. I met Jacqueline Smith, who was like my icon of a woman back in well, still, she's such a beautiful woman, posters and all that. I lunched at her house one day. And she lives in Beverly Hills. And I remember saying to her, wow, like, where did you film Charlie's Angels? And she said it was at the Fox studio lot on Pico and Century Park East. And I'm like, so I literally like went through her commute to work, where it was literally like 5 minutes from her house, right? But as a kid growing up in New Jersey, you're like, this is so exciting. Like, wow, this woman's like all over the place. But the movie industry is always what I think fascinates a lot of people about coming to LA. Whether you want to be in it or you just want to like see how it works.
Come on, these people were, and to a certain extent are to so many, larger than life. And by the way, literally, because you're going to the movies and you're looking up at this larger than life person thinking, wow, this is a job. This is what people do. And the answer is yes, and if people still want to come out here and work in the business, I say, come on out, because that's another thing. There's a lot of bad PR about LA, like, oh, the business is leaving. Oh, this is happening. You don't want to go there. Baloney or bullshit. I think that there's such great creativity here. I interviewed someone not too long ago, and she was saying, this is where collective minds are. You might go shoot somewhere else, maybe, although I'd like to keep the shooting here. But this is where a lot of the collective minds are, right? At a coffee shop, wherever. What do you say to that?
Oh, I 100% agree. I think there's so much creativity in this town. It's unbelievable. And it's almost like a fishbowl of great minds that have come together. And I've met some of the most creative people and intellectual people in Los Angeles and even in Orange County too. I mean, you just meet some really, because we all kind of came here from different places. I mean, there's a lot, it's a melting pot of different cultures and different people from all different places. So it's kind of a unique environment. And I think we're really lucky to be here. And, it's funny when I'm a person who goes back and forth, but when we're talking about what people back east think, I remember when I first moved here and I had friends that come to visit, everybody just wanted to see a celebrity, right? Like that was it. Who can I see? Where can we go? And I remember I took one of my friends to Chaya and we walked in and my friend was like, oh my God, turn around. It was Ricardo Montalban from Fantasy Island. So you remember like who you saw where. Like I remember seeing Nell Carter at like a Coffee Bean. I remember seeing John Ritter at Starbucks and we were talking about like what happened to people just ordering a regular coffee, and I remember having that conversation. And I had met John Ritter's son. He was one of my neighbors a couple of years ago. And I told him that story. And he was like, wow, my dad would always talk about that. So it's interesting how, growing up in New Jersey and coming out here and you actually meet the celebrities and you have regular conversations with them, like it's an everyday thing.
It's their work. You go hiking, there they are. You go to Starbucks. First celeb I saw, I had my sister-in-law out here. And she really wanted to see somebody. And we're driving into Hollywood. I'm like, this is not where you're going to see them. They do not just walk along, Hollywood Boulevard looking at the stars on the sidewalk. This is not where they are. Anyway, so she wanted to go. So we stopped. We were at a Starbucks and boom, there was Jennifer Aniston. I thought she was going to drop dead. Not Jennifer Aniston, but my sister-in-law. right? And I thought, you really can spot people anywhere. But to anybody in Jersey or anywhere else around the country or world, you want to spot a celebrity, go to an ordinary place, usually a coffee shop. It is true. You go to the coffee shop, a farmer's market, fresh veggies right on your Saturday or Sunday morning.
Absolutely.
This is where you're going to find them. There's your tip. All right, let's talk about, because this is being simulcast on my Little Italy podcast. You're Italian, Christopher.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about that. Growing up Italian, who was the cook? What are
Well,
some of the memories? Go ahead.
It's so funny because, I was talking about my grandmother, the one who got me the internship with Congressman Dean Gallo. But I remember my parting gift from her when I moved to California was we call it gravy in New Jersey. I don't know if you do, but I always call it gravy. Her gravy pot. So it was a pot that like her grandmother had from Italy, grew up in the Puglia region. Anyway, so I have that pot today. And I remember like it's such an important part of like my culture because I always think about all the meatballs and sausage and all the things that were cooked in that pot. And even like I said to my wife, if we had to evacuate, that's what's coming with me is my grandmother's gravy pot. And I just feel like it symbolizes so much as far as like my Italian culture because it's just something that has been in our family for so many years. Yeah, it might not have so much value, but it has value to me because it's something that's so important to my family. And I think growing up Italian, you really learn family is everything, and I wound up marrying a Jewish girl from New York. And in that culture, family is everything.
Yeah, I was going to say.
So many cultures, family is everything.
Everything.
So, I just think we have the best food. I love cooking meatballs. I love making chicken parmesan and eggplant parmesan and all that. And that's something that I'll always continue to do and, pass it on to my son, but he doesn't like to cook that kind of stuff. But
yeah, I'm not America's greatest cook. And usually people are like, okay, that's a curse because I come from an enormous Italian family in New Jersey. And somehow that one just skipped right over me. I just wanted to get to work. I didn't want to spend at the time in my brain. I was like, oh, I'm going to be there all day. Never mind. And I never really learned to do it the right way. So I cut corners a lot. And my kids are like, Mom, you're going to burn the sauce. It's never too late. But I'm not America's greatest Italian cook. How about your parents? I mean,
oh yeah.
what were they like? Go ahead.
My parents were great. I mean, they met in their 20s and, my mom grew up in an Italian household and my grandfather was, a really amazing guy. And my grandmother, just wonderful people. And, my dad's side it's kind of interesting because there were two sides of Italians. Like my mom's side was a little bit more, I'm going to say proper. And my dad's side was a little bit more loosey-goosey about the way things were done, And I remember going on Sundays, it was like going to my grandmother's house and having a bowl of macaroni or, she had a pool, so we were always there. So I feel like pasta has always been a big part of my life. And it's hard because, the pasta in America is not like the pasta in Italy, so we got to be careful where you don't want to be, 450 pounds because all you do is eat pasta. So right now I limit it as much as I can, but but back then everyone ate what they wanted, and it was just a different time, like and I remember like my wife is kind of like worried about using the knife that you cut the chicken with, where you're going to cut it. My grandmother, I don't even know, she didn't even use utensils. It was her hands were on this, hands were on that. She put it in your plate, like it was easier back then. I feel,
You're making me laugh.
You never got sick,
No, it's true, but you're right. You just put in the plate. It's like here, and you don't really like measure everything out with a measuring cup. It's like there's your hand. You put it in, and there you go. Right?
Exactly. It's a different time for sure.
What's your favorite kind of food to eat out here? Is it Italian? Is it a sort of a mix of everything? Like, where do you love to go?
I love. It's so funny because I love steakhouses. And even though I was a vegan for 18 months at one point while I was living in LA, I love steakhouses. I love Italian, obviously. And, I'm also a big sushi guy. And my son loves sushi. And we spend so much time experiencing all the different sushi restaurants in California, So those three, I think, are my top, And it's funny, and Mexican food, when I grew up in New Jersey, we didn't have any Mexican restaurants. We had Taco Bell.
No, we didn't.
When I first came to LA, I was like, oh my God, there's Mexican. It was so interesting. I never had an avocado before until I moved to LA, right? Like, it's crazy when you think about where we grew up in New Jersey. Like, they didn't have avocados and in the 70s and 80s. They probably do now, but back then, nobody heard of an avocado.
No, it's true. It's more like spinach or rapini, or you know what I mean? The Italian vegetables. My mom cooked everything
Absolutely.
with garlic. I don't like garlic. I know you're supposed to like garlic; it's healthy, but I never, But yeah, you're right. I don't remember ever having an avocado on my plate.
It's great. Now, what
So
did you do for Christmas Eve? Did you do the fish? Was that a big to do in your household?
we went from the 11 down to I think 7. I didn't eat any of them unless it was breaded flounder because I'm not exactly a seafood person, right? I'll go to the sushi restaurant with you, but I'm getting an avocado sushi. Like I'm just not that girl. But and my poor mom and dad, because they would, once I had kids, I have 3 sons, they'd be out here for Christmas and they'd be over at, I don't know, whatever market, and they'd be buying and coming back with shrimp and everything. Nobody would eat it except my parents, and that would be left over. Yes, growing up though, we did all the fish with all my aunts and uncles. There were so many of them. And they'd all collect at the house. I think Christmas Eve was at an aunt's house, and then Christmas Day was at ours. But yes, we did it the traditional way. How about you?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we always had the angel hair pasta with all the seafood.
Oh
It
yeah.
was a staple on Christmas Eve, and then they had the clams oreganata, you had shrimp scampi, you had all that stuff, was really what we did growing up. But it's interesting. I mean, you've got sons and I have a son. Like, are they going to want to continue these traditions? Like, I don't know. Like, I don't think my son he could probably eat a roll of sushi on Christmas Eve and be happy. Like, so who knows what's going to happen with the next generation?
It depends because I have friends who live in primarily Italian enclaves. Like, I think near Glendale, there's some areas. And, they're all in the same area, the aunts, the uncles, the kids. And I think they're upholding it. I know in my family where they all went away to school, they come home with different tastes. You're right. One is a vegan. He won't go near half the stuff. The other one only wants like the chicken parm, which really isn't an Italian dish anyway. If you go to Italy, you're not going to find it. The other one is a sensitive stomach. So to your point, I have no idea. I pray to God to make the sign of the cross that they make anything, that I give them. So what do you think?
No, I agree. And it's funny, this is the sign of the cross. I mean, we're talking about, and maybe we shouldn't talk about religion, but obviously growing up in a Catholic Italian household in New Jersey, we went to church every single Sunday. And that was always sort of like what we did. And it's interesting. I mean, anytime I remember if I ever got homesick, I would say, you know what, maybe I'll just like go to church because it always felt comforting in a way because it felt like something that I grew up doing, as a kid. But
Mm-hmm.
I haven't been to church in so long, and I think my grandparents are turning over in their graves because religion was such a big part of being Italian back east.
There's a tradition attached to it. I go every week. It's not during the weekend, though. I go myself privately because then I can just sort of reflect on my own. I don't have
I
to be part
love
of the
that.
whole. I do. I go to St. Monica's in Santa Monica, and
Yeah.
they have, and it's a lovely church. It's also a very inviting church for all people. You go there and you don't feel like they're discriminating against anyone. You know what I mean? They're a very open place, and
I
I like
love
it.
that.
And it's just something I do for myself. It's a shorter mass. I like it, and I try to go once a week. It's just something I do for
I didn't
myself.
even know they had masses during the week. I just
Yeah,
thought
they
it was
do. They do. And
Sundays
that
and
one,
maybe Saturday. I had no idea.
yeah, I mean, if you sort of have that, feeling, find one and then just quietly go. It's something about the tradition of it all. And of course, as a kid, I couldn't wait to get out of there. But now as an adult, I go there and I just feel a sense of peace. And I walk out of there going, okay, please, I did one good thing. Or to put it as the Jewish people would say, my mitzvah for the week, right? It's like I went quietly, didn't tell anybody, and hopefully my prayers are being heard at the very least, right?
We always had a funny tradition growing up. If for some reason, if you were, as we got older, if you were asleep, you didn't have to go to church, right?
Oh,
I
that's
remember being
funny.
in junior high, and my brother Mike, for some reason, was always asleep. And then as we were pulling out of the driveway, we'd see him at the front window, well, making a funny gesture at us, while we're off to church.
Oh,
But
I'm surprised that he wasn't pulled, that your dad didn't run in there and pull him in the car. That's funny. That's a good one. All right, we have
yeah.
just like 5 minutes or so. So
Oh
I'm going
no,
to
I
rattle.
want to talk to you for like another 2 hours, Deborah.
Well, we have to have you come back on, but a couple of things I'm going to rattle them out
Okay,
to you. So
okay.
I know that Jacqueline Smith was your it girl growing up, but to this day, when you walk into a room like the Oscars or wherever, do you just turn your head and go, I can't believe I'm in the same room with him or her? Give me a name or two.
Times. Well, it's interesting. I always kind of think about people that I've met that we've worked with. Like Laura Dern was on a cover that we had. Cynthia Erivo recently was on one of our covers. I ran into her at the Critics' Choice Awards, and she gave me such a big hello. So it's kind of fun when the celebrities come up to you and say, wow, how are you? I remember Milo Ventimiglia from This Is Us came up to me at a restaurant to say hello because we had him on our cover. So I
Yeah.
think it's kind of fun when it kind of comes together where we did something really cool. Like we had our Pride cover last year with an actress named Michaela J. Rodriguez. I ran into her at the Elton John, and it was so great to see her and reminisce about the cover. So for me, it's more meaningful when there's something that I could kind of give back or remember.
That's nice.
What we did together. So it's always important for me to have those relationships.
So I have friends visiting from back east. Where do I tell them to go for the day? A quick day trip around LA. I mean, I'm just saying, right?
I mean, I would always say, and obviously right now it might be difficult, but always take that ride up the coast. I think is so important. I love going through Topanga Canyon and going out through the valley. I think that's always a fun drive to do. I always say, make sure you make your way to either a place like Musso and Frank in Hollywood. In an old school restaurant, I think is such a great thing to do when you're here. Obviously, many people like to hike. So if they're hikers, hit Runyon Canyon. And even if you want to just like take a walk on the beach. I mean, it's funny, we live in LA and like I wish I went to the beach a lot more. I don't go that much, but I wish I did, So
I go every day. Every day you'll see me.
Deborah, I gotta start hanging out with you. We'll go to St. Monica's Mass, then we'll go to church, and then we'll go to the beach. Like that's what I want to do sometimes.
You'll actually find me. That's what I'll do. I'll actually be on the beach going for, a nice walk or slight run. And then I will go there at noon. So that'll be like my once a week.
It's funny, but someone told me you should always do 1 hour out of your day for you. And one thing that I love to do is work out. I go to this place called Stark and I love fitness. And you know what I love about it? It just takes your mind off of everything because you're just focused on doing your benching, doing your arms, your shoulders, your whatever. So it's just 1 hour out of my day that I don't think about anything, So,
all right, then we got to get you going more to the beach, but you live near the water. You should get there, even if it's by the marina or something, right? You've got the boats. You can go walk by the boats.
Oh, I do that. I just haven't really sat on a beach for a while, but I will. I'll do it.
Any parting words you want to tell our audience about you, about the magazine, about what's coming up?
I just would welcome everybody. And, we talked about, who reads LA Magazine. I mean, we're something for everybody, whether you're just, you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s. We always have ways to connect the community together. So I encourage everybody to follow us on Instagram, follow me on Instagram. I'm happy to let you know what's happening when our big food event is. And, if you have any ideas about what we could do better, let me know too. Like we're open to suggestions. And, I think we have a great product right here in LA and in Orange County and in Pasadena. But hey, I'm still learning every day, Deborah. Every day learning curve for me too.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Great product that's well-rounded, honestly, and the photography is gorgeous. It's a beautiful magazine. They all are, Pasadena as well as Orange Coast. So if you don't subscribe, go and subscribe. I mean, it's so reasonable anyway. How do you not?
And
because
here's my parting word. So Lisa Ann Walter from Abbott Elementary, she's Italian. I'm challenging her to a meatball contest. So we have a restaurant down here at Engine 28 restaurant down here in downtown LA. So Lisa's going to be cooking. She's obviously a great cook, but we shall see who's got the extreme meatball. So I challenge you, Lisa and Walter, to my meatball challenge. So Deborah, you'll have to come and experience that.
Challenge on. I love this.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk about that on my pages too. Absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much.
Deborah, thank you.
Christopher Gialanella. You are a delight. You're a bigger gem. How's that? But we're Jersey people. So, when us Jersey people stick together, like my engineer, Tony said, we where's the accent? Now, here we go. Thank you so much for joining us on our Deborah Cobalt Live and Little Italy podcast. It's really been a delight. Pick up the magazine, LA Magazine. There is nothing like a print copy of a magazine. You could do them the whole time. Hold up the other ones too.
Oh, okay. You got Orange Coast.
Yeah.
Pasadena, and you have LA.
Yeah, I love them all.
Got it
I
all.
haven't. They're wonderful, absolutely terrific. You do a marvelous job.
Thank you,
And I'm just
Deborah.
grateful that you came on and shared a little bit about your life and your journey, because, if you have a dream, you can make it. And, you're a guy who was living that, right? You grew up in Jersey, working at the malls, always sort of looking at LA as this place that would be fascinating to work at. And here you are now, the president of publisher of 3 incredible magazines, Los Angeles Magazine, Orange Coast, and Pasadena. So, Christopher, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And please find our shows on YouTube, on Facebook, then as an audio version on iHeartRadio app and all kinds of wherever you get your podcasts, you can listen to it. And then we post promos about our interview on Instagram as well in days to come. So please look for that. And like I said, pick up your magazine too. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. I'm Deborah Zara Cobelt, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.